Welcome to the Brit Tales, where English learning comes alive through story. Today's journey takes us to the dentist's chair, but don't worry, it's not just about teeth, it's about building your English confidence. You'll follow a young woman with a terrible toothache as she faces her nerves and takes a brave step toward treatment. Along the way, you'll hear how the dentist welcomes her kindly, checks her teeth, and explains the problem clearly. You'll also learn new and useful vocabulary like toothache, filling, gums, x-ray, and treatment, all introduced naturally in the story. This visit shows how real communication happens in British English, from simple questions to polite answers. And because it's a level B1 tale, every moment will help you sharpen your listening, reading, and pronunciation skills. So sit back, listen closely, and let the story guide you to better English, one word at a time. I woke up one morning with a sharp pain in my mouth that simply wouldn't go away. At first, I tried to ignore it, hoping it was just a small irritation or maybe something I had eaten the night before. But as the hours passed, the ache grew stronger, pulsing in rhythm with every heartbeat. It was the kind of pain that doesn't let you concentrate on anything else. I tried to drink some water, but even that felt uncomfortable. I looked in the mirror, pressing my cheek gently, and realized that this was not something I could solve at home. It was a toothache, and it was getting worse by the minute. Throughout the day, I found myself becoming more and more restless. The pain was distracting me from even the simplest tasks. I thought about how important it is to take care of our teeth, yet in that moment, all I could focus on was how badly I wanted the pain to stop. I remembered stories of people who had left a toothache untreated and ended up needing much more serious treatment later. That thought made me nervous, but also motivated me to do the sensible thing. I knew I had to go to the dentist, even though the idea made me feel a little uneasy. As the ache throbbed through my jaw, I sat down and considered my options. I could continue to wait, hoping it would disappear, or I could face the situation directly. It's never easy to admit when you need help, but when it comes to health, ignoring problems doesn't make them vanish. I told myself that visiting the dentist was not just about fixing this one tooth, but also about protecting my overall health. Teeth are such a small part of the body, yet when something goes wrong, it feels impossible to carry on normally. I thought back to childhood memories of dental visits. The smell of the clinic, the sound of tools, the bright lights, all of it came rushing back to me. Those memories had always made me a little hesitant, but now the pain was stronger than any hesitation. I reminded myself that dentists are there to help, to relieve suffering, and to make sure small problems don't become bigger ones. This mindset gave me a little courage. That evening, I tried to eat some soft food, but even then, every bite felt uncomfortable. I couldn't chew properly, and even swallowing made my gums feel tender. I realized the problem wasn't just in my tooth. It was affecting my whole mood, my energy, and even my patience. Pain has a way of making you feel small and powerless, but I didn't want to stay that way. I wanted to take control, and the first step was making the decision to go to the dentist. So I reached for my phone and looked up the nearest clinic. I could feel my heart beating faster as I dialed the number, but when the receptionist answered with a calm and friendly voice, I felt a small wave of relief. I explained my problem, and they told me there was an appointment available the next day. Just hearing that gave me comfort, because I knew help was on the way. That night, although the pain didn't disappear, I felt more hopeful. I knew I was doing the right thing by seeking professional care. Sometimes we delay making decisions because of fear, but pain teaches us to act. It teaches us that health comes first, and that there is strength in asking for help when we need it most. And so, with that decision made, I prepared myself for the next step, a visit to the dentist's chair where answers and relief awaited. The next morning, as the pain continued to throb through my jaw, I felt a tight knot in my stomach. It wasn't only the ache in my tooth that was troubling me. It was the thought of sitting in that chair under those bright lights with someone looking closely at every corner of my mouth. I knew I needed help, yet the idea of going to the dentist made me nervous. My mind started filling with questions. What if the pain was something serious? What if I needed a filling, or even worse, an extraction? The unknown has a way of making us feel unsettled, and that was exactly how I felt. Still, even through my nerves, I reminded myself that the pain wasn't going to solve itself. No matter how anxious I felt, ignoring the problem would only make it worse. I sat quietly, breathing slowly, trying to calm my racing thoughts. Fear can sometimes grow larger when we let our imagination take control, but I reminded myself of something important. The dentist's job is to take away pain, not to create it. This simple thought gave me a little bit of comfort, enough to help me take the next step. As the day went on, the discomfort made it impossible to focus on anything else. Even when I tried to distract myself with small tasks, the ache returned, reminding me why I needed treatment. I thought about how many people feel the same way, nervous before an appointment, but how many also walk out of the clinic feeling relieved, grateful, and free from pain. That image of walking out lighter, smiling without the constant reminder of discomfort, helped me push through the fear I was holding inside. When I finally walked towards the clinic, I could feel my heart beating faster. My hands were a little cold, and each step felt heavier than it should have. But with each breath, I kept telling myself that courage isn't about not feeling afraid. It's about doing what you know is right, even when you are afraid. I thought about the future, about eating without hesitation, about waking up in the morning without this shadow of pain. That picture gave me strength. The waiting room was quiet, but my mind was still noisy. I tried to focus on the magazines in front of me, on the posters about dental health hanging on the wall, but my thoughts kept circling back to the chair I would soon sit in. I closed my eyes for a moment and remembered why I was here. To take care of myself, to find relief, to make sure this problem didn't become bigger. My nerves were still there, but beneath them was a determination that was stronger. When my name was finally called, I stood up, feeling both nervous and ready. It wasn't easy, but I knew the hardest part was behind me, the decision to come. The walk into the treatment room felt like stepping into the unknown, but I also knew it was the only way to find answers and healing. I took a deep breath, sat in the chair, and reminded myself that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply allow others to help us. As I sat down in the chair, the brightness of the light above made me blink, and for a moment my nervousness rose again. But then I heard the calm and friendly voice of the dentist welcoming me warmly. That simple gesture put me a little more at ease. There was no rush in the way she spoke, no sense of judgment, just reassurance that I was in safe hands. She asked me a few gentle questions about my pain, when it started, how strong it felt, whether anything made it better or worse. Speaking about it made me feel lighter, as if sharing the burden with someone who understood reduced the weight of the worry I had been carrying. With a kind smile, she told me that she was going to take a careful look, and that if I felt uncomfortable at any point, I should raise my hand. That small instruction made me feel more in control, and the idea that I had a choice in the process eased some of my fears. I leaned back slowly, and the chair adjusted with a soft hum. I gripped the armrest lightly as she put on her gloves and lowered the tools beside her. The sound of metal instruments always made me uneasy, but her calm presence reminded me that they were simply tools of care, not of harm. She began by shining a small mirror and light into my mouth, moving gently and patiently, explaining as she went. She didn't just examine silently, she spoke to me, telling me what she was checking, pointing out the gums, the tooth surfaces, and the areas that looked sensitive. It wasn't just a checkup, it was a conversation. That explanation helped me understand what was happening, and instead of feeling like a silent patient, I felt like part of the process. After a few moments, she straightened up and removed her gloves with a calm confidence. Her voice was steady and clear as she explained what she had seen. She told me that one of my molars had a cavity, and that was what was causing the pain. She explained it in simple words, not rushing, making sure I understood each part. She said that the tooth wasn't too badly damaged, and with a filling, the pain could be treated and the tooth saved. Hearing that made my shoulders relax for the first time in days. I had feared something far worse, but her clear explanation reassured me that this was manageable. She continued to describe what a filling was, how it worked, and how the procedure would go. I appreciated how she didn't use difficult terms without explaining them. She even showed me a small diagram of the tooth, pointing to the area where the cavity had formed. That simple act of showing made it so much easier to understand. I nodded as she spoke, feeling a sense of relief that finally the mystery behind the pain had been solved. Her tone wasn't just professional, it was caring. She reassured me that with local anesthetic, I wouldn't feel pain during the procedure, and that afterwards the tooth would feel stronger and more comfortable. She also explained what I could do to take better care of my teeth in the future, giving me advice that felt personal and practical. For the first time since the pain had started, I felt calm, because I knew exactly what was wrong and how it could be fixed. As I left the chair for a short moment, waiting for the treatment to begin, I realized that clarity is sometimes the most powerful medicine. Knowing the problem, hearing it explained in a way I could understand, and being treated with kindness transformed my fear into trust. As I sat in the chair, listening carefully, I noticed how the dentist used simple words to explain what was happening inside my mouth. Each word she used felt like a new piece of vocabulary that not only described my situation, but also became a lesson in understanding. The first word she mentioned was toothache. It sounded so ordinary, yet at that moment it carried all the weight of what I had been going through. A toothache isn't just a small discomfort. It's a kind of pain that can take over your whole day. She explained that when people say they have a toothache, it can mean many things: sensitivity, infection, or damage. But it always signals that something needs attention. Hearing her say it out loud made me realize I was not alone, that this was a common problem with a clear name and, thankfully, a solution. Then she introduced another word, filling. She explained it slowly, making sure I understood what it meant. A filling, she said, is used to repair a tooth that has been damaged by decay. Instead of losing the tooth completely, the dentist removes the bad part and replaces it with a safe material that restores strength. As I listened, I imagined the hole in my tooth being cleaned and then protected, like repairing a wall in a house that keeps everything strong and safe. The word filling suddenly became more than a medical term. It became a symbol of repair, of something broken being made whole again. She went on to talk about gums. Until then, I had always thought about teeth, but rarely about the pink areas that hold them in place. She explained that gums are just as important as teeth, and when they are healthy, they protect the roots and keep everything stable. She showed me how mine was slightly swollen, probably because of the irritation caused by the cavity. Hearing this made me realize how much I had overlooked them, and the word gums became another important part of the vocabulary I carried with me that day. The next word she used was X-ray. She told me that in order to see more clearly what was happening inside the tooth, sometimes an X-ray is needed. She explained that it was like a photograph, but one that showed what the eye couldn't see. It could reveal hidden decay, problems with wisdom teeth, or even infections beneath the surface. The way she described it made the word feel less like a piece of complicated technology and more like a window that gave the dentist the power to look deeper. I realized then that learning English words in real situations makes them easier to remember because they are linked to experience, not just to definitions in a book. Finally, she spoke about the word treatment. It was the simplest yet the most important word of all. Treatment meant the process of solving the problem, the care that would bring relief and healing. It was a word that carried hope, because behind it was the idea that pain could be replaced with comfort. Treatment wasn't just about the filling itself. It was about the entire journey, understanding the pain, diagnosing the cause, taking action, and finally, moving forward without fear. As I sat there, I realized that what I was learning was more than just medical advice. I was learning a new set of words that would stay with me forever, words that connected health and language together. Each new piece of vocabulary gave me confidence, not only to talk about my problem, but also to understand the care I was receiving. And with every explanation, I felt the distance between fear and relief grow smaller, until the only thing left was trust in the process. When I finally sat in that chair, one of the things I noticed most was how much language mattered in every step of the visit. Communication was just as important as the tools and the treatment itself. The dentist didn't just look at my tooth in silence. She asked questions in a way that made me feel comfortable. "Where exactly does it hurt?" she asked gently. I pointed towards the back of my mouth and tried to explain. "It's sharp, and it gets worse when I chew." She nodded, repeating my words back to make sure she understood. That small exchange showed me how clear, simple sentences can be the key to explaining pain in English. When she asked, "How long have you had this toothache?" I realized how important it is to know time expressions in these conversations. I answered, "Since yesterday morning, and it's getting stronger." The way she listened carefully and wrote it down made me feel heard. It wasn't only about speaking correctly. It was about being understood in a moment of need. I understood then that good communication at the dentist is about clarity more than perfection. The dentist also explained everything she was doing before she did it. "I'm going to check your gums now," she said. That word, gums, was already fresh in my mind, and hearing it used in a natural sentence helped me remember it better. When she said, "I'll take an X-ray so we can see the tooth more clearly," I didn't just hear a technical word. I heard how it fit into real communication. By listening carefully, I was not only understanding my treatment, but also improving my English in a way no classroom could fully provide. Even small, polite phrases played their part. When she asked, "Would you open your mouth a little wider, please?" I felt the warmth of British politeness in her tone. These small touches reminded me that learning English isn't just about vocabulary. It's also about the way requests are made and how kindness is expressed in professional settings. I found myself replying with short phrases like, "Yes, of course," or simply, "All right." And even those simple words felt like part of a useful dialogue. At one point, when she explained that I would need a filling, I asked, "Will it hurt?" She smiled softly and replied, "You'll have an anesthetic, so you won't feel pain during the treatment." That short exchange taught me more than just dental vocabulary. It showed me how to ask questions, how to express worry, and how to receive reassurance. These conversations are not only about health, they are about trust, and trust is built through clear and gentle language. Even when talking about aftercare, the instructions were a lesson in communication. Try not to eat until the numbness wears off. she said. Then she added, "If you feel any discomfort later, take a mild painkiller." These were simple sentences, but they carried a rhythm and tone that made them easy to follow. Each instruction was practical, but each one also became a reminder of how English is used naturally in real-life situations. By the end of the visit, I realized the dental chair had become more than a place of treatment. It had turned into a small classroom where communication mattered just as much as medicine. Through every question, every explanation, and every polite phrase, I learned how powerful language can be in helping us through difficult moments. And as I left the clinic, the pain in my tooth no longer felt like the only lesson of the day, because I had also discovered how to use English with confidence in one of life's most real and human situations. As I reflected on the visit, I realized that what I had experienced was not just a lesson in health, but also a powerful lesson in language. Listening to the dentist speak, hearing her calm and careful explanations, gave me the chance to improve my listening skills in a very natural way. Every word, every phrase was spoken slowly and clearly, and because it was about something that mattered to me in that moment, I paid close attention. I noticed how important it is to listen, not only to understand vocabulary, but also to catch the rhythm of British English. The intonation, the way questions rose gently at the end, the way reassurance was given in a softer tone. These details are what bring a language to life. Listening in real situations becomes practice for the ear, training it to recognize sounds, patterns, and meaning in ways a textbook never fully can. At the same time, reading played its role in the experience. In the waiting room, there were posters about dental care with simple but useful phrases. Regular checkups keep your smile healthy, or protect your gums with daily brushing. These sentences became like mini reading exercises, short pieces of text that carried both meaning and vocabulary I could connect to the visit. Even the forms I filled out before the appointment gave me a chance to practice everyday English in writing. Simple words like allergies, treatment history, or insurance details stood out as part of the larger world of medical English. Reading these words in context helped fix them in my memory more deeply than if I had only studied them on a list. Pronunciation was another area where learning naturally happened. When I asked about the filling, I tried to repeat the word slowly, shaping it carefully, and I listened to how the dentist pronounced it. I noticed the clear I sound in the middle, short and sharp, not long and stretched. Repeating words in context, especially after hearing them from a native speaker, made them easier to remember and pronounce correctly. Even a word like anesthetic, which had always seemed long and difficult, became more familiar when I heard it spoken naturally and tried it myself. Speaking these words aloud, even in short phrases like "will it hurt?" or "thank you for explaining," gave me practice that was meaningful because it was real. What struck me most was how this one visit had brought together all three skills: listening, reading, and speaking, in a natural flow. It was not a classroom, but it felt like the most practical lesson I could have had at my level. For a learner at B1, where the goal is to move from basic understanding to more confident use, this kind of story is perfect. The vocabulary is not too complex, but it is specific enough to be useful in daily life. The sentences are short, polite, and clear, which makes them excellent models for speaking, and the listening experience is gentle but real, showing how English sounds in everyday professional settings. As I left the clinic, I thought about how important it is to practice English in stories like this one. Stories make language easier to follow because they connect words to situations, feelings, and experiences. They give context, and context makes everything more memorable. For learners, a story about visiting the dentist is not only about dental care. It is about how to listen carefully, how to read naturally, and how to speak with growing confidence. And in every small detail of that visit, there was a lesson waiting to be learned. And so, our story at the dentist comes to an end. We followed a young woman with a terrible toothache, watched her face her nerves with courage, and saw how a calm and caring dentist welcomed her, checked her teeth, and explained the problem clearly. Along the way, we discovered new vocabulary like toothache, filling, gums, x-ray, and treatment. Words that are not only useful at the dentist, but also in everyday English conversations. We learned how communication in British English is gentle, polite, and clear, showing us how questions and answers can ease even the most nervous visit. Most importantly, this story has helped us practice listening, improve reading, and strengthen pronunciation at the B1 level, making English learning both practical and enjoyable. Thank you for joining this tale. Keep practicing, keep listening, and let every story bring you closer to confidence in English.